Hey everyone, I'd like to officially welcome all of you to the 2021 CPO Mastery Conference. My name is Mo, and I am the CEO and founder at Product Faculty, and I'm going to be your host for the day. The premise behind this conference is simple. If you want to be the best, you have to learn from the best. And we've lined up some of the top product thinkers and visionaries to share their hard-earned insights from the trenches. And these folks are working at the best companies like Google, Walmart, Ancestry, and more. Before we begin, I'd like to kick it off by sharing a story about why I started Product Faculty. About 5 years ago, I was the lead instructor and curriculum designer at a popular product management training school. At the same time, I was the first ever product lead working at one of North America's largest retailers, and I was tasked with launching and growing the online sales platform from launch to over $200 million. I found that what I was teaching at the product management training school that I was teaching at was good for aspiring PMs to help them land their first role, but I realized that it wasn't tackling the issues that I was facing myself as a product leader. What I found was that although there are many different options of where you can learn PM training, they broadly fall into two categories. One category is training that is focused on aspiring PMs and beginning product managers. And the other category is primarily content-based, self-paced programs. But despite these offerings, I felt that something was missing. I felt that there was a need for a structured, guided, and advanced training program that builds real confidence. And that's why Product Faculty was born. Our focus is exclusively on you, the product leader, folks that want to seek a specialized training that builds real confidence. You know, the confidence that you feel when you nail a product review meeting, or when you launch a product with no surprises, or the feeling that you get when you are trusted and respected by your stakeholders and your team. Now, having personally delivered over 1,000 hours of completely live product management training, which, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think any other individual has done in the world. What we found is that this framework is what we use to build confidence in the product leaders that work with us. All of our efforts are focalized in making you, the product leader, more confident. And I'd love to walk you through this 10 C's framework. At the heart of this framework is the most important component of the system, the live classroom. And when I say live, I don't mean a 2-hour case study with 1,000 people on a Zoom call. I mean 50 hours of live instruction in a truly intimate classroom-style environment where you spend the full day learning directly from the world's top product operators. The sense of accountability, the comprehension, and the friendships that you'll make is one of the key reasons why our program is rated the highest NPS in the industry. So, what's inside the classroom? You'll get 3 things: coaching, advanced content, and community. By coaching, I mean being able to go deep into the nuances of the specific product problems that you're facing. I can remember from our last cohort, for example, we dove into questions like, hey, why is the experimentation program at my company failing? Or where do I start if I want to create a career ladder for my new product org? Or for my specific company and my specific industry, how do I think about the launch strategy so that I'm successful in the market? Now imagine you're a product leader and you just took on a new role. You're in the thick of it. The only way to solve these problems is by coaching. Next is content. Now look, there is a ton of information online. You can watch a lot of YouTube videos, you can read first-round articles, and you can read books that are available. But for product leaders in the audience, time is your most valuable resource. You want the highest return on your investment, which is why you only want the insights which will drive the maximum impact in your environment. And more importantly, you want the knowledge to be structured, guided, and organized in the way that it's delivered. The final pillar is community. This is what brings us all together. You're not alone in this program, nor will the experience end when you graduate. We have intentionally focused on community building and firmly believe that you're going to learn as much from each other as you will from your instructors. Once you have these three, this is where the magic happens. Over a 7-week period, you will confirm what you already know. You will consolidate and get to an end-to-end understanding of the entire product management lifecycle and fill in any knowledge gaps that you were feeling before. And more importantly, you'll build new ways of thinking that will help you level up and tackle any problem that comes your way. This foundation is what gives you competence and credibility. And this is what translates into true confidence. If you are a mid-career product manager or product leader looking to master your craft, head on over to productfaculty.com and please reach out and chat to us about our upcoming cohort on September 25th. And as for this conference, don't forget, join us in the conversation at any point. Use the hashtag CPO Mastery, tweet us your favorite insights, and we'll be sure to reshare them with our followers. Now, we are thrilled to have you here, so let's dive right in. Our topics today will range from things like product leadership, product strategy, product innovation, and more. And now I'd like for everyone to please welcome our keynote speaker, Ming Chi, who is the EVP and Chief Product Officer at the world's largest retailer, Walmart. Welcome everyone to our opening keynote as part of CPO Mastery Conference. We're joined today by Ming Chi, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Product Officer of Walmart. As a Chief Product Officer, Ming is responsible for delivering outstanding customer and associate experiences for over 225 million weekly shoppers and 2.3 million associates. Prior to Walmart, Ming was a managing director and head of digital CX at JP Morgan and Chase, and before that, held various leadership roles at Samsung, Nokia, and various startups. Ming is also the recipient of 3 Global Design Awards and holds multiple patents. Ming's talk today will focus on how Walmart, the world's largest retailer, is using an omni-channel strategy to become more agile, customer and associate-centric, and ultimately helping its customers save money and live better lives while helping simplify work for its associates. We're excited about learning from his experience, and Ming, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Mo, for the kind introduction, and thank you all for having me. I feel so fortunate to speak to such a motivated, curious, and engaged group of change makers as part of the CPO Mastery Conference. As Mo mentioned, my name is Ming Chi. I have the honor of being the first Chief Product Officer at what I believe is the world's greatest company, Walmart. My team has responsibility for all the products, platforms, and services that serve 275 million weekly customers and 2.3 million associates across our 4,700 US-based stores, Walmart.com, and the Walmart apps. Now, you may be wondering what role product plays at a retail company outside of the obvious. I can tell you that product management at Walmart is far greater than the sum of its parts. It hasn't always been this way, but the fast-paced advancements in today's technology, combined with rising customer expectations, is pushing all companies, including ours, to continuously evolve to keep pace. With that in mind, I'd like to share with you today a bit more about our journey and how product management is becoming Walmart's force multiplier. In 2019, we began making many internal changes to our structure to reflect how we wanted our customers to experience Walmart. This meant one US CEO to oversee stores and online, one chief customer officer to oversee an integrated customer experience, one merchandising team to manage online and in-store merchandise, and so on. So when I joined Walmart at the beginning of 2020, the product teams were still scattered throughout the organization and typically reported up through their respective teams. For example, the baby registry team reported up through the e-commerce division, whereas the associate product team reported up through operations. The challenge with this siloed product structure was that roadmaps were determined based on the strategic needs of the vertical, not the needs of the customer experience, nor the needs of the US business in its entirety. So internally, this way of working prevented us from moving with speed and resulted in half-built products, and most critically, a broken customer experience and a very complex work environment for our associates. So earlier last year, we took another step in our omni-channel journey by creating one product organization to oversee all product platforms and services for our customers, sellers, and associates. But as all product managers know, when you solve one problem, you create new ones. So when we centralized our product teams, we found another area of opportunity. It's said that one can see the priorities of a company by looking at who reports to the CEO. We learned quickly that if product's allegiance is to customers, sellers, and associates all, the sensible reporting structure for product is to the CEO. Today, product reports directly to the CEO and plays an integral part in defining, prioritizing, and executing the company's omnichannel strategy. At the corporate strategy level, product governs intake, prioritizes requirements based on strategic and financial criteria, and manages roadmaps and backlogs to deliver the most effective products for all of the different types of end users. Having this level of backing and trust from Walmart's leadership is rewarding, and the work is massively complex, which also it makes it thrilling. I tell you this to share my first key takeaway. For those of you who work at companies who may be on similar journeys, and that is, organizational structure begets user experiences. Companies must get their internal structure right if they want to effectively deliver products for their end users. Earlier, I mentioned that product management at Walmart is far greater than the sum of its parts. So now I'd like to share about how we operate an enterprise product management function within an organization that is as big and complex as Walmart. I think one of the most appealing propositions that brings product managers to Walmart is the opportunity to work on products that span the largest industries, including retail, healthcare, financial services, advertising, and more. And we do this at an unparalleled size and scale, but truly at the pace needed of a startup. The challenge with this, however, is that product development isn't one and done. All our products are linked to one another, and the product team is responsible for connecting these dots. We've done a lot of work over the last year and a half to evolve the way we work within Walmart, not just as a product function, but as an entire company where we're all working together to solve customer and associate problems. I liken our architecture to that of a watch. On the exterior, you're presented with an experience that offers its users a well-choreographed performance of seconds, minutes, and hours. It's dependable, it's reliable. On the inside, its operation is constructed in a way that will bring its display to life and is orchestrated by many intricate interconnected pieces of hardware and software working together in unison. And of course, every watch is backed with an underlying casing that serves as a foundation. This is exactly how you can envision architecture at Walmart. Let's take a closer look. Like the exterior of a watch, we have our experiences. These experiences are defined as the end-to-end journeys for customers, sellers, and associates to engage with Walmart for all their needs. Like a watch has multiple displays, we have multiple experiences. Accountability for each experience belongs to a business leader. Shopping in store, for example, is an experience. Like the interior of a watch has its hardware and software, we have our capabilities. Capabilities are the building blocks that work together in unison to bring an experience to life. Checkout, for example, is a capability that's not only used in the in-store shopping experience, but also the e-commerce experience. Finally, just as the watch needs its backing, we do too. This is where the technical stacks or systems come into play. Store systems, for example, is one tech stack that powers checkout throughout the organization. So why am I telling you this? Because this is the framework for how we give clear accountability and direction for how Walmart delivers on our customer, seller, and associate needs. I'll use auto care centers to illustrate. Walmart operates 2,580 auto care centers across all of our supercenters. These auto care centers conduct standard services, including oil change, tire repair, and so on. With a goal of making Walmart's auto care centers our top choice for car maintenance, we needed to solve a series of problems that span multiple experiences, including the in-store, online, as well as the associate and the merchant experience. We began by narrowing our focus to the tire buying process. In a search and discovery phase, we found that online, it was difficult for customers to identify the right tires that fit their car. And in-store, long wait times due to outdated hardware led the perception that our associates weren't as knowledgeable as they are. As it relates to purchase and install, customers typically avoided purchasing tires online because they needed to also schedule time to install them. This is a huge barrier to online tire buying. And if they did decide to buy online and call the store to get them installed, they wanted an easier way to track updates in real time so they could do other things. Finally, given the unpredictable nature of tires and roads, we needed a way for customers to be known at any Walmart store. So if a customer has a flat wall on a road trip, they can pop in at any Walmart auto care center and the technician will have their service history readily available, knowing what they need in their car. To solve search and discovery online, we created a new fitment widget that allows the user to enter the year, make, model of their car and be presented with tires that fit their vehicle. For customers who want the expertise of an auto care technician from the comfort of their home, we created a guided tire buying process. Here, a real virtual Walmart associate, Scott, guides the customer through the relevant questions to ask when buying new tires, all online. To solve search and discovery in stores, we created a new tire find application that uses the same exact fitment technology so store associates can quickly enter the customer's information and see what's available right there in store for them. For purchase and installation, we created an online feature at checkout that allows the customers to schedule time to get their tires installed at their local auto care center and to give them real-time updates as their tires are being installed. We launched Service Tracker in the Walmart app, giving text message updates as well. Finally, to be sure we remember the customer the next time they visit any Walmart auto care center, we added a single view of the customer across all of our auto care centers within our associate app. This meant migrating more than 140 million customers to the cloud. And to put that into context, that's almost the population of Russia. At launch, we saw a 40% click to buy on our guided tire finder experience. We saw a 4-time increase in installation appointments. For text opt-in updates, we saw a 60% adoption rate. And most importantly, we were hearing great feedback from our customers, as well as the associates who serve them. I share this example to show the many different experiences, capabilities, and tech stacks that come together to bring this to life. This isn't how every organization should operate, but we're finding that this is what works best for Walmart. My second key takeaway is this: clear accountability and collaboration is paramount. Collaboration is key when you have products that span multiple verticals, but you must take the time to outline who has accountability for what. To do this, create and iterate an architecture that works best for your organization. And when you roll it out, do so with the mindset that you'll identify additional opportunities along the way and continue to mature and evolve that architecture over time. Albert Einstein once said, "The world as we have created it is the process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking." I've never experienced a time in my life where the acceleration of thinking was at an all-time high more than during this pandemic. To say it has pushed us to innovate and change our thinking is a big understatement. What it did for us was quickly validate the need for our four-in-the-box operating model. This model gathers representation from product, design, technology, and the business, and is the model we use to deliver product experience and capabilities. Product owns the vision, problem statements, solutioning, and road mapping. Design represents the needs of the users, including the unmet needs identified. Tech owns the execution, technical architecture, and implementation and testing that the business manages the experience. Together, we collaborate in partnership of the problems that need solving. Is what enabled us to move with speed as we've launched a series of products throughout the pandemic. For example, early in the pandemic, before vaccines were made available, we conducted hundreds of drone deliveries of COVID-19 self-collection test kits in areas that were hit hardest. More recently, we've built experiences to support COVID vaccination efforts. When vaccines were beginning to be made available, the execution of this rollout was really challenging. Every state had different eligibility requirements. Vaccine inventory was unpredictable. Vials needed to be used within hours, and our pharmacists needed to manage the increase in vaccine volume while also managing their critical day jobs. For our teams, it wasn't just a matter of designing an online scheduling tool. It was a matter of designing a trustworthy, agile, scalable, and most importantly, HIPAA compliant experience that connected our customers to the most recent updates in their communities and made vaccine distribution manageable for our pharmacists. We began with an online COVID hub that housed all information about COVID, from testing locations to all new vaccine scheduler that was built within a matter of weeks. The scheduler was customized to each store based on vaccination eligibility requirements in your community. It changed constantly to keep up as new requirements are announced state by state. Additionally, vaccine schedule management evolved for our pharmacists. We created a new tool that gave them visibility and editing capabilities to the scheduler for patients. This allowed our pharmacists to manage all incoming vaccinations and schedule the second doses, which were critical. On top of this, many of our stores are in areas that are designated as medically underserved areas by our health resources and service location, you can see. We created a series of community events to administer the COVID-19 vaccine to drive higher vaccination rates in vulnerable communities and conducted community vaccine events in 43 locations across 18 states. Today, we have nearly 5,000 Walmart and Sam's Club locations administering the vaccine, and we've given millions of vaccines. In addition to managing the distribution of vaccines, we've also heard from customers of their concern carrying a paper vaccination card. In response, we've launched a digital vaccine record available in the Walmart pharmacy account. The vaccine record is a free digital version of the vaccine cards issued by the CDC, so people no longer have to worry about losing their paper copy. Launching in the future will be additional functionality that will allow families to bundle their records and access records for those under the age of 18. Typically, rolling out a program of this level of complexity would have taken months of meticulous planning, but we didn't have the time, and it showed us that with the right operating model in place, we could release minimum viable products that matter at scale and speed and continue to enhance appropriately over time. My final key takeaway is then this: design an operating model that empowers your teams to execute with speed. Product managers gravitate towards friction. We're problem solvers. And for many of us, the more complex the problem, the more important the problem, the greater our thrill and satisfaction. As product leaders, it's our responsibility to design an environment that lets product managers do what we do best. Today, we talked about 3 ways that Walmart is doing that. We're constantly evaluating and evolving our organizational structure. When we uncover new problems that need solving, we're clearly outlining who is accountable and collaborating as a team to solve. And finally, we've designed and are continuing to evolve our operating model in a way that works best within a complexity of a large and purpose-driven company. Speaking of purpose-driven, I want to leave you all today with one final note. Product innovations at Walmart truly are purpose-driven. Every day, our products are put to work in store and online and allow the product managers to see their efforts in action and how they positively impact customers and associates, especially across many different types of essential life needs. When you think about Walmart's size and scale and the areas of opportunity that make a difference in the lives of many others, whether it be through retail, health, wellness, financial services, or more. The opportunities are really endless. I found myself working harder than ever, but it's the most rewarding work I've ever done throughout my career because I see our work impact the people around me and the communities every day, and I'm really proud of it. If you're interested in joining our team, we are actively hiring. Feel free to email me directly with your resume if you're interested. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, thank you very much for listening and your time. Back to you, Mo.
Thank you very much, Ming, for doing this insightful talk for us today. It's been fascinating to get a peek into how product management is done at the world's largest retailer. I'd also like to thank our global audience who've tuned in from around the world. Folks, please take the opportunity to give Ming a big virtual round of applause. And we'll be back for additional talks, so don't go anywhere.
I have been doing tech products for a long time, and my biases, you can see where they come from. I started as an engineer. I did that for a lot of my career, and then I got more interested in product and product leadership. But I've done the product management, product design, and engineering components, and the leadership of all of those. So that's sort of where I come from. That's my world. And really for quite a few years now, I've just been working with startups and growth stage companies all over the world and sharing what I learned basically. And my focus of all my work really is trying to share with companies all over the world the techniques and practices I see used at the best companies in the world. And that is, I will say there is a big difference between how the best companies work and how the rest work. And I really would like to try to close that gap. And so that's really what I talk about in all my talks, one level or another. Now, mostly what I talk about is how strong product teams solve hard problems in ways customers love that works for your business. It really is my favorite topic. I don't seem to ever tire of talking about that topic because the techniques are constantly evolving and getting better. And I just think there's so much good stuff to talk about and to share and to learn in how product teams work. But one of the things that I really learned with the release of the second edition of Inspired, which had a big publisher that really got it all over the world. And I realized that in many companies, the teams were loving the techniques on how to do this product work, but they were telling me that their management was not letting them work this way. And that was a shock to me. It's like, how in the world, why in the world? We're talking about why wouldn't you work like the best companies in the world do? It's not like they're not making boatloads of money. They are. They are literally not also the most valuable companies in the world. So it's pretty shocking why they wouldn't. But of course, I understand a lot of the dynamics about why. Most of the leaders have never seen it done well. They've never worked at one of those companies. They're also sort of scared of what that means to really be a technology-powered company. They don't get that. So, all right, what I realized was I needed to focus more on the leaders because the leaders are really the ones that either make this happen or not. So for the last really 2 years, I have been focused on writing and speaking to the leaders. And yes, the new book reflects really 2 years of that effort. And that's really what I'm talking about here. What I'm summarizing is I want to try to provide you with a high-level overview of the role of product leadership at a good product company. Now, I do talk to a lot of leaders at these other companies, the ones that are not so good. And the first thing is they often think that the way to have empowered teams is literally just to get the management to back off and let them do their job. But of course, I try to explain to them that, first of all, that's naive. And second of all, it's not true. It's not true. And in fact, the real key here is empowered product organizations don't require less leadership. They require better leadership. And then I explain to them what is involved with being a leader, a product leader at a real product company. And they're usually pretty shell-shocked because first of all, they had no idea they were supposed to be doing these things. And second, they're like, wow, how do I learn how to do these things? Even if I, want to, this is a very difficult job. And it is. So I'm not going to shy from that. It is a hard job. I'm going to try to spend this time to give you a high level overview of what the job is of a product leader. And then to give you a sense of, first of all, how important it is that you do these things. And second, that it is hard and why it's hard. All right. So the foundation of all this, just very quickly, is this idea of empowered product teams. And just to make sure we're on the same page, when we say an empowered product team, the purpose of an empowered product team is to serve customers in ways the customers love, but work for our business. Now, that's in contrast to most companies where the purpose of the teams is actually to serve the business. So you'll see a very stark contrast right there. Similarly, an empowered product teams are given customer or business problems to solve rather than features and projects to build. So in feature teams, they're given a roadmap of features and say, build this. You get this stuff out this quarter. In an empowered product team, they're instead given some problems to solve. They might be customer problems, they might be business problems, sometimes they're both, but they are hard and worthy problems to solve. And then they are empowered to actually discover and deliver a solution to those problems. That's really the litmus test for an empowered product team. They get to figure out the best way to do it versus a feature team where they're just told to implement these features. And then unlike a feature team where if you just give them a roadmap and features and if those things don't actually solve the business problem behind it, you can't hold the team accountable because they didn't come up with those features. So unlike that, we now giving them the problems to solve, we can now hold them accountable to the results. And what that really means is that if the first thing they build doesn't actually solve the problem, they don't stop. They keep iterating. They either change their approach or they do other things. So that's what we mean by an empowered product team. Now, like I said, in an empowered organization, you don't need less leadership to pull that off. You need better leadership. And that's what this is really about. I'm sure most people know who Andy Grove was, the CEO of Intel, but he was also a legendary industry CEO. He's actually the guy that invented OKRs. He started with the predecessor technique to that, MBOs, management by objective. And he really, because he had created an organization that was all about empowered product teams. And his idea, the idea of OKRs is then you need a way to assign work to these empowered product teams. So that's where objectives came from. They are problems to solve, and the key results are the outcomes we're expecting and we're measured against. So that's where they came from. By the way, that's why if you try to apply OKRs into a feature team organization, it's a big waste of time, because they're a mismatch. But when you're talking empowered product teams, that's what they're for. But anyway, of course, he is, there are many great quotes attributed to him. He was quite the leader, but I love this one. What gets in the way of good work? It's really two things. The first is that people don't know how to do good work. The second is they may know how, but they don't really want to, or they're not motivated. So what we're going to do in this talk is really tackle each of those in turn. The first topic is managing. So it's also true, I'm saying I am having a little distinction here between management and leadership. And that's what Andy Grove was speaking to, the distinction. Now, of course, most leaders are also managers. But the truth is the mix changes a little bit. If you're a first level manager, let's say you're a manager of engineers or designers or product managers, then about 80% of your job is this: managing, coaching, and staffing. And about 20% is the other thing I'll talk about, leadership. On the other hand, if you're a chief technology officer or a chief product officer, it's really the reverse. About 80% of your job is leadership and about 20% is managing. So the mix changes as you work your way through and up an organization. But essentially, these are the two things that every leader does: lead and manage. So when we talk about management, that's primarily coaching and staffing. And of course, those two are very related. In terms of coaching, I mean, this is the single biggest and most important responsibility for every people manager. And honestly, I believe that no matter what the job, even if you're managing a sales organization or a customer success team, your primary job is to develop your people. But when it comes to product managers, designers, and engineers, this is extremely important because nobody is born knowing how to do those jobs well. You might have gone to several years of an academic institution to learn the theory, but of course, you got to learn how this is really done in practice, and that comes from coaching. So just to set your expectations, if you're a first level manager of individual contributors, if you're that first level manager, you're probably spending on the order of 50% of your hours at work working on coaching. So this is, and if you're not, that's probably a big problem. But as Bill Campbell, you may know, he's considered the greatest coach ever. He literally coached Larry and Sergey at Google. He coached Steve Jobs at Apple. He coached Bezos at Amazon. And literally, yes, coaching is not a specialty. You cannot be a good manager without being a good coach. This is the essence of being a people manager right here. And I know that I am the beneficiary of many people who spent a lot of time coaching me. And if I wouldn't have had that coaching, I would not have done nearly as much as I have been able to do. And sometimes it took me a while to get points, so they had to really work at it. But I eventually, it really sunk in. And I am so grateful that I worked in companies that understood that coaching was the highest order responsibility of a manager. And so it's normal to do an assessment, to put a coaching plan in place, and then to coach on the knowledge, coach on the skills, coach on the context, which I'll be talking a lot more about in a minute. But coaching is the center of what a good manager does. Some of you may recognize Christian. He's a longtime friend of mine. I watched him lead product organizations at 2 major companies. More than that, I watched him turn those organizations around from basically old style feature teams to among the best empowered product teams, holding their own against anybody. And Christian is just he's a great product leader, but anybody who's worked for him will tell you his superpower is coaching. He literally can, anybody lucky enough to have worked for him, they can't stop raving about it. And anyway, I saw that for many years. In fact, I personally, for several years, worked to recruit him. And he is now a partner of mine at SVPG because he is so exceptionally good at this. But I love this quote of his: every problem is a people problem. And I really think he's right in our world. It is. And so that's how we get things going well, is we coach our people. And of course, coaching is very related to staffing. In fact, if you do a good job in staffing, you don't have to spend quite as much time on the coaching, but they are critical. In fact, that's a pretty strong statement from Bezos. And he, by the way, reiterates this point at least every year. But their approach to hiring has been and will be the single most important element to their success. And, there's a lot of key elements to their success. They are pretty good at really everything we're going to talk about. But he's claiming staffing is at the foundation of that, and it's hard to argue. with him on that. Staffing is so essential. And this is another one of those things like coaching. A lot of times I'll talk to product leaders at companies and they don't even, I ask them, what's your main use of time? Tell me about your job. And they don't even mention coaching. It's not even in the top 3 things that they do. They're far off. And they sure won't mention staffing. Because they view that that's the job of HR. Of course, it's not the job of HR. It's the job of the hiring manager in a good product company to actually go out and recruit the people. Like I mentioned, I personally recruited Christian, and I have personally recruited probably on the order of 200-300 people over the years that I have worked to build a relationship with. Sometimes it starts as just a mentor relationship, just like, hey, do you want to talk about your career? I think you've got a lot of promise. Love it. Maybe one day you work with me, but if not, I don't really care. I want to see you do well. Just starts like that. You have a coffee occasionally and you start to get to know each other and you see if you can't, steer some good opportunities their way. And eventually it's like, yeah, you should come join us. So that is how that's what a hiring manager does. They go out and recruit the right people for your team. And of course, interviewing, the hiring process, the onboarding process. And I was always told as a manager that I was essentially being judged by my ability to get people successfully promoted. And that's success. Because remember, as a people manager, your product is not your product. Your product is your people. So this is how we know we're doing well. It's not, in most companies, you can't just say, I promote you. You have to go get other people, other leaders, other peers to agree that that person has earned that promotion. So my job is to coach them to the point where they are ready for that. All right. And yes, making some hard calls sometimes when some people are just clearly not able to do the job, you need to fix that. All right. So that's coaching and staffing. Let's talk about the other side of leadership, which is strategic context. Now, that's the term that we use for this. At Netflix, they use the mantra, lead with context, not control. And they're really talking about the same thing here, what we call strategic context. And when they say not control, what they're saying is you don't want to hire good people and coach these people and then tell them what to do. That's command and control style management. If you're going to hire good people, you want to push decisions down to them. You want the teams to make the decisions, to take ownership, to solve the problems. But it's also true that if you want teams to make good decisions, you have to provide them the context. If they don't understand the context, if they don't understand how the company makes money, if they don't understand the dynamics in the marketplace, if they don't understand the nature of customers that you have, they don't understand the enabling technologies, how are they going to make good choices? They can't. So the way you lead in a good product company is, like they say, Leslie Kilgore, by the way, if you haven't heard of her, she was one of the earliest and longtime leaders at Netflix. She's on their board still, but yeah, she coined this phrase, lead with context, not control. And I love it. And it's very much captures what we're talking about here. It's another way of saying, don't tell them what to do. Empower. All right, so what does it really mean? It starts really with the business mission and objectives, but that comes from the CEO, from the board of directors. That's pretty straightforward. This is the purpose of our company. These are the 3 big things we're trying to do this year. That comes from the very senior leadership. Most of the strategic context actually comes from the product leaders. And I should say, when I say product leaders, I should have clarified this earlier. I'm talking about the leaders and managers of product managers, leaders and managers of designers, and the leaders and managers of engineers, those leadership team. At the minimum, it's your CTO and CPO, those 2 key leaders. But they are responsible for this strategic context, the product vision, the principles, the topology, the strategy, the team objectives. This is their real contribution beyond coaching. This is what they do. They have to create this context and then they have to evangelize the hell out of it. So let's talk about each element here of the strategic context. And I want to be fair. These are, each of these topics is a multi-hour topic. each of them. So I'm not exaggerating. It literally took more than 400 pages to describe these topics in the new book. So these are not small topics. But what I want to do is give you a high level sort of 100,000 foot appreciation for these. So product vision is one of the most important artifacts really from the product leaders, especially the head of product. And it serves many purposes. It's I call it the gift that keeps on giving. But the idea is, first of all, business objectives are great, but that really doesn't say anything about our customers. That's for us as a company. The product vision is first and foremost about telling the story from the customer's perspective. How will it make the customer's lives better? And of course, one of the great things about a product vision is if you have 20, 30, 50 product teams, it's very hard to make sure they're all going in the same direction. The product vision is one of our most powerful alignment tools. That's why companies often call it the North Star. It's also why so many companies, for whatever reason, they don't understand what product vision is, and they do a separate product vision for every product team, which if you just think about it for 30 seconds, you realize is nonsense, but that's what they do. Now, partly what they're doing is they're feature teams, not product teams. So there is no one vision. They're just trying to please stakeholders. But anyway, on a product team, it is meant to unify. Of course, we want to make sure that we're giving meaningful work. The vision is so important in recruiting strong people because they want to work. Good product design and engineering people want to work on something meaningful. And it's the job of the leaders to make sure this comes across, which is why the product vision is a little different than the other things we do. It's more art than science. It literally is a persuasive tool. It's not meant to be a spec or any kind of, narrative. It's meant to be persuasive. And it's also meant to be emotional. It should be emotional. We work hard to actually make it emotional. That's one of the reasons we'll often create a prototype that shows it, but then we'll make a video of that vision type prototype in order to put a soundtrack on it, in order to use the camera angles to make it more compelling and emotional. You want to show how you're leveraging industry trends, how you reflect the company's values. Like I said, it is our best recruiting tool. Also, it's really important to realize that this product vision, it also drives the architecture. The engineers are responsible for the architecture, of course, but they need to know where we're going if they're going to build an architecture that can support what our products need to do. And in fact, I tell the engineers, if you don't have an up-to-date product vision, you shouldn't get started on the architecture. You should wait, because you'll end up supporting the wrong thing. You'll end up doing something where in a direction we're not going, or worse, build what we needed 5 years ago, not 5 years from now. And then, of course, it also drives the team topology, which is very important, and our next topic. There's so many great quotes around product vision. This one has always resonated with me. I feel like this captures what we're trying to do here with empowerment, but also that emotional element very well. So it's a famous quote. You've probably seen it before. All right, let's talk about team topology. So the team topology is derived from two things, really. One is the product vision we just talked about, and also the product architecture. Those two things kind of converge on a team topology. What a team topology is how do you structure your product teams? So if you're a little startup with 5 engineers, this is a non-issue. Your company equals your product team is just one team. But let's say you've got 50 engineers, which is probably on the order of 10, 15 product teams. How do you decide what each product team is responsible for and how they relate to each other? That is team topology. That is one of the most difficult but most important decisions product leaders make, is your team topology. If you don't do this well, you'll pay for it for years. And by the way, it shows up. How does it show up? Well, teams saying, every time we try to add just a basic feature, you have to go work with 5 other teams or 20 other teams. And it should only take us a day to do this, but it ends up taking us 3 weeks because we're not in charge of anything. We don't really have autonomy at any level. And so that what they're really doing is fighting their topology. Their topology is getting in the way of their work rather than helping their work. So what we're trying to do when we come up with a team topology is maximize for this sense of ownership. You want each team to own something meaningful. That little graphic in there, which you may or may not be able to see, is just an example of a real company's team topology. This was a jobs marketplace company. So there was a job seeker side, people looking for a job, an employer side, and a platform side. And those were the actual product teams. You could see the names of the team, and from the name, you could get a pretty good sense of what they do. What they own. And then of course we want to maximize autonomy. No team at scale has 100% autonomy. Autonomy refers to, do you have everything you need within your team to make any change you want? Now, most cases, no. Most cases you have some level of dependency, but that is one of those things where nobody has 100%, but if the topology is done well, you can do most of what you need. And the dependencies you have are reasonable dependencies. And then alignment. We want to make sure we're all going in the same direction. We're all working together, and we understand how we align to our customers, how we align to our business. So yeah, the phrase highly aligned, loosely coupled, that's another mantra at Netflix, but it's also a mantra at many tech product companies. That's what we're trying to do with our team topology. I try to explain to leaders, there is no single perfect team topology, but there are lots of bad ways to do it. And I told you what it's like when it's bad. All right, so that's team topology. That is another big, and admittedly, that is one of the most difficult jobs for a product leader. And this is something where the head of product and the head of technology need to work this out together. It never works if it's one or the other. They have to work this together because there is a lot of negotiation involved. All right. Then, of course, product strategy. This is where things really start to get interesting. And in fact, this product strategy is often where the difference between good and great product leaders are, right here. Product strategy is really, if you've got, let's say we've got 15 product teams like that job marketplace company. They compete against companies that have on the order of 100 product teams, which is not that unusual for a large company, right? A good product strategy can help an organization that's relatively small have a bigger impact than a much larger organization. Strategy is all about getting the most out of the resources, out of the investment, the time, money you have. So strategy is very much about working smarter, not harder. Richard Rummelt, for those that don't know, he wrote my favorite book on strategy called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. But the idea here is, you will not get a good product strategy out of some MBA formula. It doesn't happen. This is not a canvas you fill out. This is not a little worksheet. This is a hard work, real work. It starts with focus, deciding what's really important and all the things you're going to say no to. And then for each focus area, you have to get into the weeds, get into the data, get into the qualitative research, understand the insights that let you, what are really the levers that are going to help you move the needle. And then, of course, you need to turn that into action. You need to turn that into work. And that's actually our next topic. And then, of course, you have to manage that activity, but in a way that is not disempowering. So not managed by command and control, but rather managed by servant-based leadership, we would call it. All right. You all probably have seen this Steve Jobs quote, but it's really true. Focus is not about what you're going to say yes to. It's really, it's about saying no to everything else. So when we talk about focus, it's really about like 2, 3, maybe 4 important things. Everything else, not going to move the needle. So that is very different than the way most companies work. And so for those focus areas, we're going to leverage our people to really move those needles. Instead of what so many companies do, which is, it's actually got a name. It's called the peanut butter strategy, where you just spread your people evenly, but incredibly thinly across all these 50 different needs, and you end up moving the needle on none of them. So, and then of course, how do we assign this work to people? Well, we assign them with objectives. This is the real use, the intended use of OKRs, not how most companies do them. But if you want to know how Google or how, you know, good product companies actually use them, this is how. They're for the product teams as the primary empowerment tool. We don't want to tell people how to do them by giving them a roadmap. We want to give them problems to solve. And that is, that's really the heart of it. Avid is a product leader. She's actually in the UK, long time at Google Ventures, a very strong product leader. I tell her story and 7 other leaders' stories in the new book, but she sums it up right here very well. A leader should articulate what needs to be done and why, and then let the team decide the best way to do it. That's what team objectives are all about. We need you to solve this problem. Our conversion rate is terrible here, or our churn rate is too high here. We need you to solve that. Please go figure it out. And then the teams get to work. They use their skills to solve those problems. All right. So let me try to summarize. I threw a lot at you, and admittedly, this is a very high level. Each of these topics are big topics. I mean, hopefully you can appreciate that. They're all big topics. But I also want you to realize that it's really not rocket science. These things fit together in a logical way. And that's what I want to try to summarize here. Product vision describes the future you're trying to create. So that's 3 to 5 years out, 5 to 10 for hardware, but it's out there. The team topology defines how you're going to structure your teams to go after that vision. The product strategy lets us decide what problems we need to solve. And then the team objectives are how we assign those problems to specific teams. And then, of course, once we've assigned a specific problem to a specific product team, product discovery is how they figure out a solution that's worth building, a solution that's valuable, usable, feasible, viable. And then when they have some evidence and confidence it's worth building, then they build it. That's product delivery. That means that they are building a scalable, performant, maintainable, fault-tolerant solution that they will QA test and deploy to the customers. So that's how these sort of 6 concepts work together. And leaders, the first 4 are the leaders, and the bottom 2 are the product teams. But that's how things fit together. The last thing I really wanted to emphasize here was that I have told you, I have admitted to you that the product leader job, hopefully you can see it's a very different job than at say a feature team organization, which is really just a facilitator. They still do some staffing. They don't do much coaching. They do staffing. And then they basically try to please as many stakeholders as possible. Totally different job. You can see it's a very hard job. I also was struck by, recently I gave a talk and some leader asked a question. She was frustrated because she felt like there was just no way to please all her stakeholders. And she was very guilty about that. And I was trying to explain to her, that is not your objective. If you're trying to please your stakeholders, first of all, you're not doing your job, but also it's not possible. If you know, you would need to be orders of magnitude larger and you'd still probably fail. So it is not about pleasing stakeholders. Now, it's not about blowing them off either. We don't want to be rude. We want to be transparent. We want to be honest, but it is not about pleasing stakeholders. I love that Steve Jobs quote because he understood this very, viscerally. Yeah, if you want to make everybody happy, don't be a product leader. Sell ice cream. That's a much better job. But yeah, the product is, well, you heard him say it before, when you make choices, especially on your product strategy, there will be people that are unhappy. The best we can do is be very transparent as to why. Here's why we're doing this. If you disagree with it, let's talk about it. But this is why. There's nothing against you. It's nothing. It's just, this is why we only have this many engineers. We only have this many designers. We need to make some choices about what we can really do. And this is, and we all would like to still be working here a year from now. So these choices we make matter. That's why product leadership is hard. All right. And then just to finish up there, many of you probably have heard of Inspired. Inspired was written for product managers and product teams, but it wasn't written for product leaders. And Empowered was written to share the practices of great companies for product leaders. So they are meant to complement each other. And I am certainly hoping that more product leaders will read Empowered and start providing the environment that their teams need in order to do good work.
Welcome, everyone, to our next talk as part of the CPO Mastery Conference. We're joined by Surojit, who is a director of product at Google. Surojit has held various roles at Google, leading product teams for Google Discovery, Media, Google Answers, and others. Prior to that, he worked at YouTube, where he built and grew the live streaming product. Surojit's talk today will focus on why your great product strategy might fail. You'll hear real-life stories from the trenches, and we're looking forward to learning from your experience. Surojit, I'll have you take it away.
Thanks very much, Mo. I appreciate the invitation, and I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. So this is a little unusual. I give a lot of talks on product and product management, and quite a few on product strategy. But this one, really, I'm just going to share 3 stories where, even if you have a great product strategy, sometimes that's not enough. Like, you need to go a little bit beyond. So yeah, I'm excited to talk to you guys about that. So let me start as soon as I figure out how to advance my slides. All right. So let me start with, you have to have an obligatory, who am I? What do I know about this slide? I worked on product a long time. I started as an engineer. I worked at a startup in grad school. After grad school, I went to another startup founded by a professor of mine. I tried to start up on the side. That didn't work out. I joined Google after business school, thinking it would be something, I would do for about 2 years, but that was like 14 years ago now. But I've been lucky enough to work on a number of products while I've been here. So YouTube, ads, Chrome, payments, games on Google Plus and Google Play. I've worked on a bunch of products. I've led product teams. I've been lucky enough to work on a few different 1 billion plus user products and a couple of products that have failed, one of which I will talk about today. And I think I've had a chance to learn from some really great people about strategy and intuition. And so this talk is a little bit of things I've learned and things I've learned from others as well. Let me do a quick sort of take on product strategy first, though. I think product is an amazing job. I feel very lucky to be a product manager, but with it comes, and I can talk about that some other time, but with that comes amazing responsibility. And I think the core of that job is product strategy, right? So what is it that your team is doing is the critical part of being a PM. I love 2 definitions of product strategy. One is by Gibson Biddle. He talks about how will your product delight customers in hard to copy, margin enhancing ways. I love this definition because every sort of phrase there is why your product will succeed. The other one, which is a simpler definition, but I like, is from Adam Nash, which is, as a product manager, your job with product strategy is to define what is the game you're playing. Why will you win? What is your plan? And then how are you keeping score? What is the metric that you're using to know, yes, my plan is working, I'm on track, I'm excited about this, right? So that is, in a nutshell, that really is product strategy. So the dirty little secret, though, is most product strategy that you will come across is terrible. In most cases, it's not even product strategy. Like many times when I talk to teams and say, like, what is your strategy? It's really a wish list. It's more of a plan. Sometimes it's what they think is a vision statement, or it's something that, an exec told them, hey, here's your strategy, and they go do that. And the reason is, good strategy is really, really hard. It takes a lot of work. Sometimes you need to get lucky. Sometimes you need to have a deep understanding of the market. You have to have incredible empathy for the consumer. That is not an easy thing to do. There's a number of books I suggest you guys can read. There's a number of articles out on the web. I like this one from Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, but it's mainly this idea that like it requires a lot of work and iteration and planning. But let's say you get there. Let's say you do all the hard work, you have an amazing product strategy. Sometimes even that is not enough. And so what I'm going to share is 3 short stories where you can have great product strategy, but in the end, sometimes even that's not enough. And so the thing I realized as I wrote these, as I was sort of thinking about these, was, oh, all of these are now pretty old. Almost all of these are over a decade now, which tells you I've been unfortunately doing this for a very long time. But let's start from there. All right. So my first story is about one of the first sort of was in some ways at the time the most exciting thing I got to PM. This is a story about games. So I was the first product manager on what was then Google Plus Games. This was the early days of casual gaming. Facebook had like done an incredible job on casual gaming on Facebook, and so this was our plan to sort of launch games on Google Plus. And I worked on it. I was the first PM on it. I sort of worked on it from nuts to bolts. So we worked on partnerships. We had a great strategy for how we go to market. We built developer APIs. We engaged with a number of sort of marquee partners. I designed the gaming mechanics along with the team on Google Plus. We launched a destination site, a merchandise store, all of that. It was awesome, honestly, when we launched and we saw scale. It was the only launch that I've been on where Larry Page came by later to congratulate the team. We grew usage. We had tons of happy users. Like we launched with 5 games. We had 30 in about 6 or 7 months. Usage hockey stick. At some point, it was 40% of all Google Plus usage. But fast forward 6 months, we were shutting down the product. And I was part of the team that sort of wrote how, I wrote the blog post and we had, when we sort of announced it, we got emails from users saying, oh my God, I met my wife on this thing. What are you doing? It meant so much to me. It came crashing down. Now, there were a couple of reasons. And to some extent, the team sort of saw it coming, but also didn't see it coming. And it made me think about, okay, what happened? There were a few reasons for this. Some were internal, right? So a lot of the team, myself included, had started working on the mobile version of this, which became Google Play Games, which lives today. And so some of our attention had shifted. But the real reason was external, right? Is while Google Plus Games itself was growing, we kind of missed the context of what we were doing. So even though Google Plus Games was growing, as a platform, Google Plus was doing okay. And while games might help Google Plus as a platform, it also meant you had a bunch of developers on Google Plus that could now see how the platform was doing. Because they had developer APIs, they could see the rate of people's friends, they could see metrics to some extent. It changed the PR narrative completely, right? So it sort of gave visibility to the external press of like, how is this platform doing, when it was something that the larger team didn't want to talk about. So overall, just the risk was enough that leadership said, all right, you guys, you're shutting down, you have to go focus on this other thing now anyway. You should think about bringing this product down. So it made sense in the context of the overall narrative. So and later, like a couple of sort of months after all of this happened, I was sitting down with a very senior product leader, and he said, I was trying to debug like what happened, what did I do wrong? And he said, we walked through it, and he said, like, did you see any scenario where this was going to succeed? And I was like, now in retrospect, I don't, but at the time, I just didn't see it. And so that's my sort of first takeaway from this story, right? Which is you can debug, you can understand your consumer, you can understand your market, you can understand gaming dynamics, and you can make the thing that you're working on successful. However, you have to understand the context in which all of it is placed. Sometimes, you're a feature within a larger product. Sometimes you're a product and the feature of a larger company. You have to sort of think all the way through to understand what the implications might be of what you're building. It's not sufficient to say, my product works for my users and I'm driving metrics and look, I'm succeeding. Having this broader view of how everything fits in is critical, and it's a huge part of product strategy. So that takes me to story 2. So I talked about something that wasn't successful, but now I'm going to talk about something that was incredibly successful, but had all these side effects that no one predicted at the time. Hopefully you recognize the logo. This is a story about YouTube. I worked at YouTube twice. I've been lucky enough to really enjoy sort of the product work there. And unlike the earlier story where sort of I was the PM, I was very deeply involved. This one is more, I had a ringside seat to it as a lot of it was happening. A lot of this work was keyed off before I got to YouTube the second time around. So in I think around 2017, YouTube actually published a blog post that said, hey, we had this incredibly hard milestone. We wanted to hit 1 billion hours of watch time a day. And by the way, we hit it. This is one of the most incredible product stories and product strategy stories I have ever sort of been around or been part of. Because the seeds for this were actually sown, 5, almost 6 years earlier, where the team said, we are going to significantly change the way people watch YouTube. We're going to go have this crazy mark of 1 billion hours of watch time a day, which basically, to make that real, like not only would YouTube have to change dramatically, really the internet would have to change. Internet infrastructure would have to change, right? Every part of how people watch things had to change. Like we had to rethink like industries really to sort of make this thing a reality. In order to do that, like you're sort of taught as part of product strategy, have a single metric, have everyone and have like a central question, and every prioritization decision can be answered by that question. And it's very rare to see that done and to see that done well. And I saw that over this long period. Every decision that came up, people said, okay, will this grow watch time? And the answer was, oh, yes. Okay, will this grow watch time more than the other thing? And the answer was, yes, you got to do that thing. Every system, every business decision, every product decision, every infrastructure decision, people asked a simple question: is this going to grow watch time or not? How much watch time do you think it will grow? Every ML system did the same thing, which is, okay, let us optimize for the thing that will grow watch time. And it went incredibly well, right? We had this blog post, like people, it energized the company in like a really sort of deep way. And we executed. People were happy, creators were happy. You saw this amazing sort of effect on the entire ecosystem. And obviously, YouTube announced revenues a couple of days ago. All of that, went really well at the time and continued to go really well. But somewhere in the middle of this, I had a chat with a creator, and I know we'd all noticed this trend for a while, but for me, it hit home when I actually had this conversation with someone who was making decisions like this. And I kind of noticed that their video was, had a lot of fluff in it. It wasn't as tight as before. It was going a little bit longer. And so I said, hey, what's going on? I just feel like your videos are different. And he was like, yeah, I need to make it longer. And I was like, wait, why? He's like, because, we all know that YouTube's optimizing for watch time. And he wasn't wrong, right? Because the algorithm was trying to go for slightly longer videos. So suddenly you have this world where once the creators had figured it out, like everyone was telling everyone else, like, yep, you need to make your videos longer. And I noticed it in my own consumption, right? So I listened to a lot of songs, and suddenly instead of being recommended the next 3-minute song, I would get recommended a 4-hour playlist of a compilation, right? And so it suddenly now changed what I consumed on YouTube completely, right? So you kind of notice this, like if you just sort of look at your related feeds, the videos you're often recommended are really long videos, right? So, and it's a problem for me as a parent. Like when I search for Peppa Pig, I get the, 2-hour compilation of Peppa Pig videos versus the 10-minute thing that would be perfect for me, and I have to learn to filter it out, et cetera, et cetera. Now, obviously, over time, we adjusted and like you started changing things. But when we got this strategy, nobody thought about the secondary effects, right? Nobody thought about, okay, how do we, what does this mean to the ecosystem? What are the downsides of this? What are the risks? We had anticipated things like revenue. We'd sort of anticipated all sorts of other things, but no one kind of saw this coming. And it did, to some extent change the nature of the site, and you sort of have to adjust. And so that's my, sort of second takeaway from this, which is when you make changes, and especially if you're successful, you change the world around you, you change behavior, you change, sometimes you change consumer behavior, sometimes you change behavior of the ecosystem. When you sort of are successful at scale, that's really what you do. And it's really important to watch for the effects of your strategy succeeding, because that can sort of put your core mission at risk or sort of undermine it in some way. And so that's one of the things that I tell people, like, which is when things are working, see what's being affected now. See what you need to adjust, see what you need to change. That's like really critical to sort of product strategy as a whole. All right, with that, I'm going to switch to story 3. And this is actually the first PM job I had at Google. And this was sort of towards the middle of it. This was, I actually just moved to New York to work on what was then our payments product. It was called Google Checkout. And I was, I'd started working on things. I was like the buyer PM. For a while, I was the seller PM. So, what features merchants needed, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a story about that. This is a story about something related. So for those of you who recognize the logo, this is actually a logo of Venmo. So Venmo was, I think, started, if I remember correctly, around 2009. And sort of around 2010, we saw it gaining a bunch of traction. Now, in 2009, while I was on this team, I had a pitch. And the pitch was, hey, we should have a simple mobile app that makes it super easy to transfer money between people. And I think I have a sort of go-to-market. It's about going to colleges. Let's make this happen. And because we'd been working on checkout and money transfer for a while, like it was not a hard product for us to build because the bones already existed. I was super excited about it because the first time I pitched it, I got a lot of resistance in the system. So I actually went and spent some time making sure, wait, do I really believe this idea? What are the things I actually sort of that need to be true to make this happen? And I convinced myself that oh yeah, this is certain things need to happen. And, the business case could be a little iffy and you have to believe certain things to make it succeed. But I do think this will succeed. And I made the pitch. A lot of people liked it. But the thing I'd missed is there was a lot of organizational resistance to it because Google had tried something like that, not quite like this, but like something similar before, and it hadn't worked out. People like, oh, what is the business plan? We're sort of busy with Google Checkout and trying to get merchants going in places. Are you sure this will work? And I just wasn't. And also, again, like I'll be honest, right? This was my first PM job when you had super senior people telling me, "Are you sure about this?" I had doubts all of a sudden. It took a while. It took almost a year. And by then I had to move away from New York. The team that started it tried to do it in a way that was a little bit different. So they tied it to Gmail payments. So many of you'll see you can attach payments to Gmail instead of it being like, standalone mobile app. And we further figured it out, but we half committed to it. And we never really did what the initial pitch was, which is make, sort of money transfer between people really smooth, really simple, sort of what Venmo does. And sort of the missed opportunity for me was crazy because the timing was there, right? If we'd done it at Google scale, there's a good chance we would have been able to hit it. But what I realized is I was not able to convince people around me. And so the thing that I will say is you can have clear strategy, you can write it down, but every company, every person has some notion of inertia, which is, hey, this is our main project, it's going over here. It's always hard to start new things. And there's a sense of like companies and people have long memories. If they've tried a version of something before and it hasn't worked, they sort of miss that times change, you can aim for a different consumer segment. And so they miss the chance that you can like, sort of actually have a different outcome. And part of the job and part of strategy is, sort of diagnosing that, like, why is my pitch not working? Why am I not able, if I have conviction about the idea, why am I not able to make it succeed? And that's part of the job, right? If you don't sell your strategy, if you don't convince people that this is something that they have to do, it doesn't matter if your strategy was great. You never get the chance to see it live. So, this is why, when anyone these days, a lot of people ask me, like, when we're transferring money, especially with parents, etc., they always come up with Venmo, and I'm like, oh, like, if only. And so, yeah, this is the end of my story, which is, like it doesn't matter how great your strategy was if you're not able to sell it, if you're not able to convince people, if you don't get the chance to make it work. So those are my 4 takeaways from these stories. The first is good strategy is hard. It's really hard. Most of what you will see is bad strategy. So expect that. Expect yourself to write the first version as a bad strategy. So work at it to make it good. Always sort of think beyond. Good strategy needs to be in the context of something bigger. Think about, how does this fit into my entire company? How does this fit into my product suite? How does this fit into the industry? Like, how are things shaping? Never sort of narrow scope too much, which is a risk I see particularly early on in people's careers. They think about, how can this individual piece succeed versus where it fits overall. If good strategy succeeds, sometimes it means you've got to re-examine the effects of what is actually happening around you. How is it affecting the ecosystem? How is it affecting consumers? Do you need to tweak things? Do you need to reprioritize things to adapt to that? And finally, good strategy doesn't really matter if you don't get the chance to actually make it real or to implement it. So learn how to sell your strategy, learn how to convince people, learn how to make it real. And yeah, so that's it. That's my talk. Thank you very much. I hope this was helpful.
That's awesome. Thank you, Chatterjee. Your insights around your first story of understanding the entire context. You can have a successful product, but external things could make it, could have adverse effects. Your second story around, if you're successful at scale, watch for the effects of that. And your third story, which was around, you might have the right strategy, but the importance of selling it to the rest of the organization is super important. These are things that are top of mind for all product leaders around us. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to share this with us. Folks, please take the opportunity to give Chatterjee a big virtual round of applause. And
thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
And thank you everyone for watching. Before we begin, I'd like to kick it off by sharing a story about why I started product faculty. About 5 years ago, I was the lead instructor and curriculum designer at a popular product management training school. At the same time, I was the first ever product lead working at one of North America's largest retailers, and I was tasked with launching and growing the online sales platform from launch to over $200 million. I found that what I was teaching at the product management training school that I was teaching at was good for aspiring PMs to help them land their first role, but I realized that it wasn't tackling the issues that I was facing myself as a product leader. What I found was that although there are many different options of where you can learn PM training, they broadly fall into 2 categories. One category is training that is focused on aspiring PMs and beginning product managers. And the other category is primarily content-based, self-paced programs. But despite these offerings, I felt that something was missing. I felt that there was a need for a structured, guided, and advanced training program that builds real confidence. And that's why Product Faculty was born. Our focus is exclusively on you, the product leader, folks that want to seek a specialized training that builds real confidence. The confidence that you feel when you nail a product review meeting, or when you launch a product with no surprises, or the feeling that you get when you are trusted and respected by your stakeholders and your team. Now, having personally delivered over 1,000 hours of completely live product management training, which, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think any other individual has done in the world, what we found is that this framework is what we use to build confidence in the product leaders that work with us. All of our efforts are focalized in making you, the product leader, more confident. And I'd love to walk you through this 10 C's framework. At the heart of this framework is the most important component of the system, the live classroom. And when I say live, I don't mean a 2-hour case study with 1,000 people on a Zoom call. I mean 50 hours of live instruction in a truly intimate classroom-style environment where you spend the full day learning directly from the world's top product operators. The sense of accountability, the comprehension, and the friendships that you'll make is one of the key reasons why our program is rated the highest NPS in the industry. So, what's inside the classroom? You'll get 3 things: coaching, advanced content, and community. By coaching, I mean being able to go deep into the nuances of the specific product problems that you're facing. I can remember from our last cohort, for example, we dove into questions like, hey, why is the experimentation program at my company failing? Or where do I start if I want to create a career ladder for my new product org? Or for my specific company and my specific industry, how do I think about the launch strategy so that I'm successful in the market? Now imagine you're a product leader and you just took on a new role. You're in the thick of it. The only way to solve these problems is by coaching. Next is content. Now look, there is a ton of information online. You can watch a lot of YouTube videos, you can read first-round articles, and you can read books that are available. But for product leaders in the audience, time is your most valuable resource. You want the highest return on your investment, which is why you only want the insights which will drive the maximum impact in your environment. And more importantly, you want the knowledge to be structured, guided, and organized in the way that it's delivered. The final pillar is community. This is what brings us all together. You're not alone in this program, nor will the experience end when you graduate. We have intentionally focused on community building and firmly believe that you're going to learn as much from each other as you will from your instructors. Once you have these 3, this is where the magic happens. Over a 7-week period, you will confirm what you already know. You will consolidate and get to an end-to-end understanding of the entire product management lifecycle, and fill in any knowledge gaps that you were feeling before. And more importantly, you'll build new ways of thinking that will help you level up and tackle any problem that comes your way. This foundation is what gives you competence and credibility. And this is what translates into true confidence. If you are a mid-career product manager or product leader looking to master your craft, head on over to productfaculty.com and please reach out and chat to us about our upcoming cohort on September 25th. Welcome everyone to our next talk as part of CPO Mastery Conference. We're thrilled to be joined by Lauren Steinberg, who is the Senior Vice President at Loblaw Digital. Loblaw Digital is the e-commerce and digital arm of Canada's largest retailer. Lauren brings a wealth of experience, having led multiple teams at Loblaw, Shopify, and The Body Shop. At Loblaw Digital, she is responsible for over $3 billion of e-commerce P&L and leads multiple digital platforms, including online grocery, digital pharmacy, apparel, beauty, and loyalty. Our talk today is going to focus on three themes: digital transformation in the retail industry, advice for aspiring product leaders, and the future of product management. Lauren, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Mo. Great to see you.
Awesome. I'd love to kick it off by learning a little bit about your current role. Could you give us a brief snapshot of your scope and mandate at Loblaw Digital?
Yeah, sure. So for context, I know we've got folks from around the world, I think, here today. So maybe for context, Loblaw is a 100-year-old company. It's Canada's largest and most successful retailer, a $50 billion enterprise. We operate across a number of verticals, everything from banking to apparel to beauty, but our largest areas are grocery and pharmacy. So we have about 2,000 retail locations across the country, and over 30 million Canadians shop in our stores on a regular basis. The population of Canada is only like 35, 36 million, I think. So pretty much everyone but babies is shopping in our stores. So we have incredible scale, as you can imagine. Loblaw Digital is, you can kind of think of it as a team within Loblaw that builds and operates consumer-facing digital products, and that includes e-commerce businesses. So, our websites, our mobile apps, they're visited by millions of people every single day. They generate billions in revenue. And within Loblaw Digital, we have over 500 colleagues that span across functions like research and UX and product, experimentation, analytics, and then engineering, data science, growth, marketing, ops, and then some. And really, it's fully enabled teams who leverage our incredible enterprise assets, so like our vast customer base, the rich data that we produce, and the incredible scale to just build and operate like best-in-class digital experiences. And those are really different depending on the vertical, but we've got like a bunch of passionate folks that just love what they do, love the impact they can have. And my day-to-day is just a lot of fun leading some really talented folks to achieve just some really great things.
So Loblaw was in the midst of a massive digital transformation pre-pandemic, and the pandemic required you to scale up very quickly. What were the biggest capabilities that allowed the teams to be able to do this? And what are some lessons learned from this experience?
Yeah, so like I said, Loblaw they're Canada's largest grocer, and so when the pandemic hit, like not surprisingly, we saw enormous surges in demand, and that happened overnight. Particularly in online grocery, more Canadians were choosing to stay home, do their shopping online instead. And so thankfully, we had actually invested in infrastructure to support like spikes in traffic and like volume. We had recently migrated many of our services onto GCP, for example, so it was easy to scale up and scale down. And so while many of our competitors were actually lights out for days, sometimes weeks, we were open for business that whole time. But that didn't mean it was smooth sailing. Like we literally had to rip apart our product overnight. We were removing features that just weren't necessary, like stripping away things like lists. Like no one was using lists anymore. They were just buying and buying quickly. We had to eliminate a bunch of calls that were slowing down the site with that many users being active. We were building a lot of new functionality to prioritize our service for like high risk groups and healthcare workers, for example. So building spokes overnight where these folks who were working around the clock, we could get groceries directly to them in bulk versus having them, they didn't have time to get to a store to pick up. So we had to actually, and one of my favorite was we stood up manual fulfillment centers, micro fulfillment centers, manual picks, to support the surge in orders and volume. And then we had to build all the tech that went along with that within weeks, which was just incredible. So, when you ask kind of like what were the biggest capabilities that enabled us to do that, I'd actually say it was more so like maybe not capabilities, but a culture, or maybe like a mindset. And I think the two probably that stand out for me, like the first one is this mentality of actually what one of our core values, further together. And, because we have teams working on different products like beauty and apparel and loyalty, when the surges from COVID rolled in, our online grocery product, we actually asked folks across all teams where demand had essentially flatlined, like no one was buying clothing and beauty in the first couple months of COVID, right? And we asked, would they come and help? Would anyone be willing to kind of stop what you're doing and come over? And honestly, Mo, nobody hesitated. Everybody just wanted to get involved. Everyone wanted to make a difference. And, the truth is you can have a good product and good tech and a good strategy, but if you don't have a compassionate team that can work well together, with great internal dynamics, then nothing else matters. And I think our team, we had a lot of that, but I think we really fine-tuned it through this almost like crisis, right? And I think that was just a really beautiful thing that we kind of had a little bit of. We almost it evolved during that time period where we saw hey, look at the power of this. And I think since then it's just continued to grow. And then maybe I'd say the second one is focus. And, frankly, we cut the bullshit out. We're a large enterprise. You get bogged down. I think you were at LD. You get bogged down by a lot of the bureaucracy. But in this case, we just didn't have the time for it. And it's amazing how much you can get done and how quickly you can move when you stop doing the things that just don't matter. I think every day, if you look at your calendar, you look at what you're working on, there's probably a ton of things, unfortunately, we probably don't like to admit it, but there's just a ton of stuff that isn't going to move the needle. And so this is something that, I think we've tried not to lose as things have become less chaotic and demand has normalized, doing fewer, more impactful things or kind of what we would call just rigorous prioritization, So I guess I'd say, reasons we were able to support the spikes, the 10x growth was just everyone's ability to pitch in when needed and to be laser focused on what mattered most.
That's awesome. And, speaking to this theme of, a great Canadian story, you've seen Loblaw Digital go through a hyper growth period from 5 employees to over 500 employees and $3 billion in e-commerce e-commerce platform sales. We have a lot of aspiring product leaders in our audience that want to go on a similar journey, that want to experience the same type of growth. What are some top lessons that you can share that can help them achieve this level of growth?
Oh, yeah. A lot of luck. No, but I think maybe 2 or 3 things. So number one is if you are innovating inside of a larger organization, if you're a PM in that environment, I highly recommend building some separation in the early years between yourselves, what you're trying to achieve and the broader organization, if you can. It doesn't have to be a full moat, but what it does allow you to do is develop a speed that's more conducive to what you're trying to achieve and, create a culture of speed and agility. And so you don't as often get bogged down by politics or processes that were designed for a very different type of organization and a very different purpose. So, I think I think innovating is really hard when you're within an organization that's just a perfect, it's just a perfect machine. To go in there and try to change things is really different. And so as much of a barrier that you can put up, but, that being said, if you take this approach, also be really prepared for when you've grown to the point that those walls have to kind of come down, and what our team refers to as that whiplash that it's going to bring upon your teams and your ways of working. So I would say as much of a line there, but understanding kind of where and when you'll have to change that. The second, I would say maybe for a different type of PM and a different type of org, but maybe universal too, figure out as early as you can, make sure you understand if you or your boss or your executive team is looking to prioritize top line growth or bottom line growth. And, it's easy to go from 0 to 100 when you don't have to worry about cost and profit, right? You can grow, you can drive a ton of demand and no problem, but if you grow recklessly, driving bottom line improvements later on without at least considering them along the way, that's going to be really hard. So a really, really tough thing to go back and fix, to drive, to drive not real demand, not scalable demand. So make sure that you understand which you should be prioritizing first, and then what the trade-offs are today and what they will be in the future. And I know that's a little vague, but hopefully it resonates with some of you who are listening. And then maybe lastly, I'll just add, like, 'cause I think this is a very Loblaw Digital thing, you really have to believe in your vision. At LD, we never doubted our $1 billion goal. Like, to many outside of our team, but within Loblaw, like, that seemed impossible. It seemed like really unreasonable. People kind of brushed us off. They didn't even really worry about us. They're like, these guys they're never gonna make it happen. But we never questioned it. Like, I don't know how. Like, that goal was broadly shared. We talked about it a lot. Everybody knew that was our mission, and enough strategy was like kind of shared or cascaded to give everyone enough like data or belief to believe it was possible. And even when we were generating like 50 million a year or 5 million a year, we all believed it. We all believed it. And I honestly there is a lot to be said about like, you can't achieve it if you don't really believe it. That's such a I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but like, and it's not enough for you to just believe it. Like, the whole team has to believe it too, because I've seen parts of our organization where they had a really ambitious goal and a bunch of people walking around whispering like, this is never going to happen. This is never going to, and you know what? It didn't happen. Believing doesn't necessarily mean you will achieve it, but not believing, I believe like it's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, this is something that's quite interesting. I've talked to a few leaders, some at YouTube, when they talked about the hyper growth period at YouTube, and the goal they set was they wanted to do 1 billion hours of watch time every single day, which was more traffic than the entire internet when they were very, very small. But I see a similar thing at Loblaw, in that you do set these really aggressive goals, and they have to be believable, and you'll actually get there. As you talked a little bit about, as Loblaw Digital has now gotten bigger, some of the walls are coming down. How do you continue to foster the culture of innovation to make sure that you continue to deliver innovative products as you might have done in the early days? And I know it's continuing, but what are some of your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think, Loblaw Digital started as almost like a marketing org. We built pretty crummy products, like, no offense, but like, we built pretty crummy products, and we invested heavily in like growth levers, demand generation, CRM, marketing. We built up like that capability so that we could, inside an organization like Loblaw, we just wanted to prove to the enterprise that there was a product market fit, that like e-commerce wasn't a fad. This is 10 years ago. And, just drive a ton of demand to secure kind of like more funding, from the enterprise. So early days at Loblaw Digital, product was hired to just like turn business requirements into tech requirements. They weren't empowered to make decisions. And so, they had no insights, no research organization, very limited UX, no experimentation, like very little analytics capabilities. So it was like, it was hard to find, and it was certainly hard to keep great PMs to join an environment like that, be in an environment like that. And, it was unfair, honestly, to expect that we'd be a product-led org when product didn't have the tools to be successful. And so when I took on the product org about 3 years ago, that was the first thing I did. I built number one, I built adjacent capabilities to strengthen that product muscle, right? Change the power dynamics. I hired like more product leadership to level the playing field, and more senior levels. There was like a bunch of directors and senior directors of every other function. And then there was a bunch of like junior PMs, which again, that's not going to help, elevate that product, create that culture of innovation. Because business people are focused on delivering business outcomes, and operational people are focused on delivering operation. Even marketing folks are just focused on ROI. They're not necessarily building for scale. And so, by investing, I think, in like new tools, driving better insights, executing better experiments, increasing the ratio of designers to PMs, a lot of this kind of indirectly kind of created that culture of innovation, because you had all these very bright, very passionate people with all the right tools. It was almost that perfect storm. And, I know, the reality is not everyone can do that. Like, some people are bootstrapping it, some people are the size that they are, and that's just the way that it is. But, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to ensuring that product managers have what they need to make good decisions and debate bad ones.
That's awesome. I'm going to add a question here on establishing a culture of experimentation, because I know that, Loblaw is one of those companies that, being the size they are, they've established a very strong culture of experimentation. So what advice do you have for other large organizations that want to go on this journey? Because I think Lolbo is just an amazing example of someone that's actually been able to do that very successfully. So some advice there would be awesome.
Yeah, you don't need a lot. I'll tell you that. Like, you're right. We're a big company. We have an experimentation team of 3, and it's actually not about building a team that runs the experiments. It's about having evangelists to actually like make sure that there's a set of tools and processes, like structure around that. And then it's about permeating every nook and cranny of like the product organization and all other adjacent organizations, teams too. But actually for us, it was like, we had a really bad tool. It required a lot of like tech resources to even launch an experiment. There was no talk of experimentation. Mm-hmm. Right now, every business of ours has a Slack channel, like the business name --experimentation. You go in there, it's like my favorite channel. It like all of the experiments that are running, what the control group looks like, what the test looks like, what the designs look like, what they're trying to solve. You teach others by being louder about it, by showcasing it. And so for us, it's really not, we're never going to build, I don't think we're ever going to build a massive experimentation team. I think it's about having the right tools and then evangelizing it. It's very similar for us, accessibility, right? Again, it's like educating people, empowering people. It's not about doing it for them. It's about, making sure they understand what a good accessible product looks like, what a good experiment looks like, and making sure that that's just part of the everyday. I think it's got to come from the top for sure. Like when I came back, it's like, that's the number one thing. Product managers need to understand the impact that they're having. And you can't do that if you've got 20 PMs on one product, all shipping features. How do you know what's actually driving the outcome unless you actually test and measure? So it doesn't take much. A good platform for testing and a couple of great evangelists to kind of spread it across the board.
That's awesome. And involvement from leadership. I know that you personally were in the experimentation tool yourself at times, which is very rare for someone who's a senior leader like yourself.
Yeah, I'm very nosy. I definitely like to get into the weeds. But I honestly think for me to really be an advocate for it, I need to understand it and to commiserate if that's the case. But I think in our case, yeah, I definitely believed in it and certainly paid off.
Awesome. Some advice are for folks that are early in their career. You've been very successful in your career. What advice do you have for product managers that are early in their career, who are looking up to your path and want something similar?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's a lot of luck and a ton of hard work. I don't think there's one thing I maybe can point to and say it was, this or that. At the end of the day, like I invest a lot of time and energy into my work, to be honest. I make sure that I do what I love. And I think, it's not my whole personality, but like when I'm working, I'm like super into it. And of course, I've been given a lot of opportunities to continue to do that. So I'm very fortunate. But I think what's helped me, like, I know a little bit of everything. I know how to code. I'm not great at it, but I can do it. I'm a decent graphic designer, comes in handy all the time, like, pulling together fake mock-ups or like slick presentations for our management board. I know how to run paid marketing channels. I spend time understanding the capability of, or like the limitations of our tech stack. So just like knowing a little bit of everything without going too deep in any area I'm not directly accountable for, it's really helped me kind of navigate different stages of my career and have like a really vast toolkit, for when I need it, kind of stand out that way, like to be able to do a little bit of everything. But I think maybe beyond that, I just surround myself with people much, much smarter than me. I always punch above my weight. And it sounds cliche, but like highly recommend leaving the room if you're the smartest person in it. So for me, it's just about building great teams around me that are just way better at what they do than I would ever be.
Awesome. And the last question on the future of product management. In your opinion, what is the future of product management? What trends do you think PM should look out for?
It's a tough space to be in product, and I think that stems from product having like very obscure deliverables, like unlike engineering or design, like they're there are very few like independent artifacts for PMs, for them to like hang their hat on. Designers have wireframes or prototypes, and devs have lines of code, and I'm probably undermining it, but you get the point. For PMs, it's just difficult or, unsettling not having anything concrete to display. And so, I think because PMs are judged almost entirely on the output of their team, it's tough. Like, it's tough to really be known for something or create that. And I think, the future of PMs is about being the evangelist, like the most vocal, the greatest storyteller, almost like the public relations expert for your product, constantly highlighting it in the right meetings, evangelizing it every chance you get, being the expert or the go-to. And I think having that credibility makes you feel a greater sense of belonging and of purpose, and it gives you more authority, and you can have a greater impact. I think it's hard for PMs to stand out sometimes. And I would love to see a future where they're almost the face of the product. There's so many contributors, of course, and so many people should take credit for a great product shipped. But I think PMs have historically kind of taken a back seat there. And I'd love to see a future where they really are the greatest storyteller, the greatest producer of that vision, and really can pull all the strings to make the desired outcome a reality.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Lauren, for taking the time to share your knowledge and insights with us today. So your advice around innovation at scale, career advice for product management is top of mind for product managers and leaders that I talk to every day. So thank you again for your insightful chat. Folks, please take the opportunity to give Lauren a big virtual round of applause. And we'll be back for additional talks, so don't go anywhere. Thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone, to our next talk as part of CPO Mastery Conference. We are thrilled to be joined by Duana Wilczek, who is the Senior Vice President of Product Strategy and Innovation at Coupa, a leader in business spend management. Donna joined Coupa during the early startup days and helped grow the company to achieve a successful IPO in 2016. She's an inventor with multiple software patents, and prior to Coupa, held product and service roles at IBM, TriNet, and Accenture. Donna's talk today will focus on something that's really important for product leaders and something that we all struggle with, the art of saying no. As product leaders, we're overwhelmed with the wants and needs of our stakeholders, and our ability to say no is critical to the success of every PM and leader, and something we should all know about. We're excited to be learning from your experience here, Donna. Donna, I'll have you take it away.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. And I think it really is, as a product leader, as an owner of your product, the ability to say no is a key piece of what you need to do to be successful. And I always start by saying the first thing is, don't just say no. Don't come out and say no, regardless of how tempted you are in that kind of that blink reaction to just say, this idea doesn't make any sense. I don't want to do it. First, take a step back. And it's really critical as a product leader for you to first understand. And I'm always reminded of this kind of model of, are you able to see all of the perspectives before you are making a decision? So if you're looking at an object, are you seeing it as all blue? Are you seeing it as all red? Are you seeing it as half and half or another half? Depending on your side, depending on your point of view, your understanding of the request is going to change. So it's really critical that as the very first thing is when a customer is coming to you with an idea or request, that you first seek to understand all of the components and understand the impact that this request is going to have to the organization. How will it impact the customer? Is it a minimal impact? Is it a massive impact? Is it subject to a government regulation that you are not aware of that is going to happen or is already here? Really understand the impact, and helping the customer think about things in form of impact will help yield a successful outcome. Because of course, we've all worked with customers that come to you with an idea that maybe, well, this is how we've always done it, but they haven't really thought through the process or the request from a lens of impact, or if it's still needed in today's day. Maybe it was designed at a time where the technology was not able to support a better process. So first, take a step back and really sit down and talk about the impact to the organization and a quantifiable outcome. And when I do that, you really want to look at quantifiable value. Sometimes the little requests that are coming in are equal to a bigger effort. So you want to find some balance in your roadmap and your ability to say yes or no to these customers, and understand, are there a series of things that could be done that could have bigger impact, or as much impact of one little thing? Especially if the little things can have more impact to more customers, where things can be done in a more configurable model. But without understanding the impact and the quantifiable value, it's really difficult to be able to make an informed decision. And in order to help your customers see things and understand things, it's important for your customer to come along on the journey with you. And sometimes we get lost in the forest, right? You can't see the forest because of the trees in front of you. And I always recommend that product leaders sit with their customers and help them understand the journey that you're on. Help them to understand the milestones that are coming along the road and why you are making the decisions you're making, why these decisions have been made and how they will impact the customer. Some of these things, as you're explaining and bringing your customer along for the journey, actually get the customer to withdraw their request and say, actually, the things that you're doing are better suited for our company and will create more impact later, or even more impact along the journey, because we simply didn't see all the components and we were more siloed in our thinking. Sometimes that happens. Now, if that is not happening, and as you're working through the roadmap and understanding the journey, one of the things you'll need to do is think about investigating alternative options. So instead of simply saying no, do the work, do the homework of understanding your technology, your product, your capabilities. Think about things in an art of the possible mindset and bring the customer options and ideas for being able to provide that same type of impact or approaching that level of impact, but doing things in a different way. Because sometimes these alternative options may be good enough, maybe enough for that organization. And I always hesitate, I don't call them workarounds. They're simply options. And each organization can decide whether those options make sense for their business. But without having that good understanding, without understanding the impact and the value, and without really working with the customer and understanding their business, it's near impossible to figure out whether these options will provide value. But I feel like the investigation and the optionality is a really critical component to your customer, where you're saying to your customer, I cared enough about you and your request and your business to do the work, to investigate options and ideas we have for you to get value faster. And this shows the spirit of partnership. If those options really aren't working, You next need to work with your customer on prioritization, because many customers will come to you with a lot of different ideas. And as you're going through the process and understanding the impact of their organization, it's critical that you work with the customer to start prioritizing these elements and prioritizing broadly across all the requests that are coming in. Prioritizing the urgency and the importance, as well as, of course, the size of the request, how long it'll take you to do, in order for you to get a good picture of when these requests might or may not appear. But prioritization is critical. As much as we all want to do everything, and we all have so many ideas that are coming to us every day from inside the organization, from our customer community, from partners, prioritization is critical to long-term success. Helping your customers work with you on that is one great way to get them to a model where they're more understanding of the decisions you're making, especially if you can bring your customers together in a forum where they work together to prioritize. Maybe that's by industry, maybe it's by region, maybe it's by industry or size of company. But when you get the companies, the customers working together, it can be sometimes magical. We recently did that for the airlines industry at Coupa, where we had some of the largest airlines in the world sitting down at the virtual table with us, prioritizing needs for their industry. And I feel like that was such an important aspect of helping a company understand that their individual requests are part of a bigger plan. And that's where the partnership really comes in. Partnership is critical. As a product leader, it's important to build these relationships with your customers, because in terms of the art of saying no, if you do all of these elements where you're understanding, you're working with the customer to understand the plan, you're working with the customers to understand priority, and the customer and you have a relationship based on trust, based on doing what you say you're going to do, and in a spirit of partnering and taking the industry forward, it's that partnership that will make all of the difference in your mutual success. And it's also that partnership that is really critical when you think about this final note of it's actually okay to say no. When you've gone through all of these processes, when you've gone through and worked with your customers, it is simply okay to say no. And sometimes this is a very uncomfortable spot to be in for people, for humans. And I recommend that everyone as a product leader gets comfortable with being uncomfortable at times. As long as you have done the work, as long as you have built the relationships, as long as you are not just, again, coming right out and saying no, and as long as you are firm in the why you are saying no, explaining, it's a critical aspect to just get comfortable with saying no. I can tell you at Coupa, through the years, we've said no numerous times at the right points in time. When I first joined, about 10 years ago now, we were a cloud-only model in a multi-tenant SaaS solution. That was not the norm. We had so many companies that would come to us in the earliest days and say, well, we want alternate models. We want it to be on-prem. We want it to be legacy. And we would simply say no, because that was the right decision for the long-term success of our company. So instead of being motivated by taking a quick dollar, we were motivated by doing the right things to help our customers be more successful over the longer term. And through the years, there's been times where we've said no in sales cycles to prospective customers where we knew that the requests were not going to make those companies successful. And it's interesting that now, a couple of years later, after those things happened, those same companies are coming back to Coupa and saying, well, actually, you saying no was the right thing at that point in time. We just didn't know enough, and we sometimes needed to fail a little bit more before we recognized that the model of multi-tenant SaaS, of configuration, of being a model that takes community impact or community input into our roadmap, not just developing every single thing a customer says, is how that customer will be more successful over the longer term. So in summary, I would say, don't just say no. Don't come out and say no. Take a step back, investigate, work with your customer to understand, look for alternatives, really partner with your customers and the customer community on developing a strategy for the long term, and then ultimately get comfortable with and being okay with saying no, as long as it's guided in the right reasons, and making sure, if needed, depending on the decision, that your management is aware and supportive and helps you in that process. So that's a little bit about how I see kind of this art of saying no.
Thank you, Donna. From your presentation, what I got is the way you say no is more important than the actual no itself. And you explained that you have to start with understanding, then investigating options, not workarounds, and then prioritizing with your customers. I loved that airline example that you have them all come together. And once that partnership is formed, then doing the hard thing of saying no is so critical to your company's success and your success as a product leader. So I want to thank you very much, Donna, for sharing your knowledge and insights with us today. The examples and the best practices that you've shared were insightful and things that we can all take away. Folks, let's give Donna a big virtual round of applause.
Thank you for having me, and I hope it's helpful.
It's absolutely helpful. Audience, we'll be back for additional talks later away. Don't go away. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Welcome everyone to another talk as part of CPO Mastery Conference. Joining us now is Heather Friedland, the Chief Product Officer at Ancestry. Heather brings over 2 decades of experience in product management. She's held executive roles at leading tech companies like eBay, Glassdoor, and Microsoft, where she launched the pivotal product, MSN Calendar. Heather is an expert in product vision, product growth, and strategy, and she was named one of the Women of Influence for Silicon Valley Business Journal. Heather's talk today will focus on the themes of operationalizing product vision, and we'll dig into themes of product growth, customer insight, and we'll end with some advice for product managers. Heather, welcome. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thanks, Mo. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. I'd love to kick this off by learning a little bit about your background and your role at Ancestry. How long have you been in this role, and what were you doing prior to this?
Yeah, so like you summarized, I have been at Ancestry now for 2+ years, most recently in the role of Chief Product Officer. Prior to Ancestry, I have spent over 2 decades, mostly in consumer-facing tech, also in roles that kind of dovetailed with B2B or B2B2C technology as well, but all around the space of delivering value to end consumers. And that's really what I found gets me excited to get to work every single day. It's being able to live, eat, and breathe the products that I like to build and improve.
Awesome, that's great. Our next set of questions are going to be around Ancestry's product growth and innovation. So Ancestry was founded more than 30 years ago as a family history company and has grown into the global leader in family history in consumer genomics. Can you tell us a little bit about Ancestry's journey and evolution?
Yeah, to think about Ancestry's journey, you need to go back into the Wayback Machine, because before Ancestry, family history research was really cumbersome and really time consuming, almost inaccessible, really. Research required visits in person to local historical societies, churches, or even government buildings, where a lot of the records that are now available in Ancestry were kept. Finding one document could have taken months, if it was even accessible at all to people in the community. So by digitizing billions of historical records and offering an easy to use search index and platform, Ancestry has really made family history research accessible to millions of people around the world. In 2012, we added Ancestry DNA to our suite and portfolio of products, and that really allowed us to help gain a whole new level of understanding on behalf of our customers, for them to discover more about themselves and to connect with one another and the world around them, and to really understand relationships and identity in a whole new way. Delivering innovative experiences and cutting edge science continues to be a priority for us now more than ever, as consumer expectations and interests also shift around people wanting to discover more about their history, who they're from, and where they're from. So really our focus is that we just want to provide the best historical content, the most, unique products and services that will really make it easy for people on our platform, including younger generations, to discover who and where they're from.
So that's a pretty compelling vision. And how are you operationalizing this vision?
So from an operational perspective, we're focused on continuing to innovate for our current subscribers and deliver new experiences for millions of people who are interested in learning more about their family. We've traditionally focused on delivering historical content. So what does that mean? It's things like census records, newspaper articles, military draft cards, documents that really kind of recorded somebody's existence in the world. And these are the artifacts or the pieces of history that have helped people discover their family history. Looking ahead, we're going to look to introduce new features for people to add their own family stories and to kind of append and extend our platform with photographs and other historical records that maybe are just sitting in a shoebox in their closet, so they can share them and enjoy them with other family members on the platform. Family history research is often kind of a solo endeavor. And so really key to our success is going to be opening the aperture and enabling people to kind of share, collaborate, and really bring people together to enable them to connect like no other platform can. So that kind of dynamic social experience you can imagine from that, you can envision that starting to take life here at Ancestry.
Awesome. So as you're evolving to deliver products for everyone, what role does diversity and inclusion play into your product vision?
I mean, diversity is so important at Ancestry. This product is so personal to someone's identity. Every day on Ancestry, people are finding long lost relatives. They're connecting with biological members of their family. They're finding out things about themselves, even as adoptees or, in different scenarios where they had no other place to turn but to our platform to really understand more about their heritage and their identity of self. So it's really important for our employees to come from all different kinds of backgrounds and families to really best represent the customers that we serve every single day. So regardless of family dynamics, whether that's race, ethnicity, heritage, the language you speak, we want everyone to be able to see themselves and their family represented well in our products. And that's why we're focused on building more inclusive experiences for all families.
Awesome. Now, the next set of questions are on leveraging the enormous amount of customer insights that Ancestry has. So, given the number of product teams and the volume of customer insights collected, could you share a little bit about how you build a culture of customer research to prioritize these insights into the product?
Yeah, I mean, in my past working at other companies, I've definitely started to create a playbook of how a team across product, analytics, design, research can really start to come together to better articulate the needs of customers through the insights that can be collected. And so I've kind of created like a mini playbook that maybe I'll share with you. The first one is just to think about how are you going to measure success of the customer experience. And there are typically two different kinds of customer focused metrics you'll often hear about in product. You'll hear people talk about NPS or Net Promoter Score. And you'll also hear sometimes people talk about customer satisfaction or CSAT. I have a lot of opinions about which metric to choose, and a lot of that's based on my own personal experience trying to move each of these metrics in different roles throughout my career and in different products throughout my career. I really like to use CSAT. It is typically collected as feedback in the midst of somebody experiencing your actual product. And so it's a much closer measurement to their impression at that point in time. And I think gets you really much closer to the heart of what the customer is truly experiencing. So using a metric like CSAT, typically measured on a scale from 1 to 5, can help you better articulate the impact and the impression that your product's having at the moment in time that somebody's actually interacting with it. Once you pick that metric, it's really important to start to learn your way into it, to try and socialize as much research as possible, enabling it to be accessible to anybody in the organization, and to create a mechanism where you're starting to then go into my next phase, which is kind of reviewing and analyzing those insights together, whether that's weekly meetings, Slack channels where all the recent research is published, debated, and discussed amongst the team. As a leader, I think you can have a large role here to really set the example by carving out time, space, and communication channels where people can rely on the ability for the information to be published, available, and debated and discussed so people can all take away the same insights together. And that part of the process I like to call kind of democratizing the data, learning your way into the data. But I think it's a really critical step to people internalizing and understanding the needs of the customer. And then finally, it's around action. It's great to learn, it's great to measure, but what are you going to do with your insights? And really, I think this is where it's critical to figure out how you make the customer research accessible, approachable, and scalable in an everyday context. So training the team so they understand that they can ask questions and that they understand how they can speak to customers themselves is a really critical piece of the story. I've worked with many PMs before who have said to me, I'm nervous about calling a customer, or I don't know how to do that. I work with a researcher who knows how to do that. Today, there are so many phenomenal and inexpensive tools. There's also just the telephone or Zoom that enable you to have a conversation with a customer. And one of the critical steps to really acting on the research is making sure that people feel comfortable talking to customers themselves and getting at the facts and the bits and the pieces of the story that are really going to help them think about the needs of the customer in a richer way than average. I think the second one is to figure out how do you prioritize where you're going to spend your time and your effort and your resources. So, there are times when it makes sense to bring in a professional researcher to help you act on that data and to learn more about that customer. There are also times when I think it's better off just pick up the phone and call a dozen people and you'll figure out the answer to your question really quickly. And so I think the key here is to have a diverse set of tools and methods for listening to customers, dashboards and internal channels where it's all available, and to use these together to make sure that they're being used in the right ways through product reviews and other forums to really inform the right solutions and takeaways.
That makes a lot of sense. So getting alignment across the entire product team is a challenging task, and especially when you have many teams at Ancestry. Do you have any advice for product leaders to effectively gain alignment so that everyone is moving in the right direction?
Yeah, I think it really starts at the top level. What's the company objectives? What's the business strategy overall? And what are you trying to achieve as an organization in receipt of that strategy? That needs to tie to a product strategy where you can start setting some metrics to measure success and outcomes of what things should look like a year from now, 3 years from now, as you set out to start mapping out a roadmap of bets and levers you can pull to start to move yourself towards delivering on that overall product and business strategy. But I think the key is to really figure out the top level. What are we trying to drive towards? Use data to start driving decision-making and prioritization, and then use that data and refer back to it to help guide yourself through alignment conversations along the journey. I guess the last step is how do you manage that on a day-to-day, week-to-week, and quarter-to-quarter basis? You need to have processes in place where the team is constantly working together towards the next smart set of objectives and checking themselves on progress. Whether that's a quarterly basis, I think every company is kind of different. I typically like to look at things quarterly because I think that kind of ties neatly to how you can divide up the work over time as you think about the engineering work and then the impact to the business. But various companies have different methods here. I think it's not about the cadence, it's about having those moments to come together and review progress, both post-morteming and then pre-morteming, looking ahead to see what is it that we need to do next based on what we've learned behind. And it's the combination of those conversations, plus always keeping in mind that North Star set of metrics that you're looking to drive towards, that really is the great unifying factor around alignment.
Awesome. And for our very last question, Ancestry, I'm sure, is hiring a lot of PMs. And from the product leaders that you hire and product managers that you hire, what sets apart the strongest PMs from the rest?
Oh, that's a really good question. That's like the heart of the issue, isn't it? When I think about what really sets apart strong PMs wear a lot of different hats, from being the CEO of their product and understanding the business and the metrics and the performance of it, to the relationship manager, a negotiator, a project manager, somebody who's going to be super influential within the organization to kind of lead and help make sure that the work we're doing is the right work at the right time. And it's a real jack of all trades role. I would say what I look for is somebody who can be both an influential leader and a hands-on practitioner. It means finding the right combination of leadership, creative problem solving, and customer empathy, as well as some element of data-based thinking, where people are willing to make decisions based on data and insights, whether those are insights that come from within, they may be qualitative or quantitative, or if they come from the outside, where you're really listening hard to your team to really identify the right solutions for the problems you're trying to solve. But that natural innate curiosity, that ability to really tie what the customer needs are back to the right product solutions is super hard to hire for. And I would say over the course of my career, I've definitely tried to refine it down to the short set of things. And so my philosophy here is kind of like customer obsession, data-driven thinking, creative problem solving, strong motivation, like a real winning mindset that needs to come from within, as well as great ability to listen and lead others. And I think the winning combination of a strong PM will show attributes of all these different skills, perhaps alongside other specific things we're trying to hire for from an experience perspective.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Heather, for taking the time to share your knowledge and insights with us today. Your advice around product growth, innovation, and what makes a good PM and a product leader are top of mind for product managers and leaders that I speak with. So thank you for your insightful talk. Folks, please take the opportunity to give Heather a big virtual round of applause.
Thank you.
And we'll be back for additional talks, so don't go anywhere. Thank you, everyone. Welcome everyone to our next talk as part of CPO Mastery Conference. We're thrilled to be joined by Carol Wilner, who is the VP of Product at Puppet, the industry leader in IT automation, who serves over 80% of the global 5,000 enterprises. Carol is a vibrant IT leader with decades of experience. Most recently, she led Intel's public cloud strategy, and before that, she led the customer experience and services and ecosystem around Amazon Alexa. Carol's talk today will focus on influencing to alignment, a topic that I'm sure is on the mind of every product leader. It's often said that half of product management is stakeholder management, and being able to influence others to achieve product outcomes is among the top skills needed to become an effective product leader. We're excited to be learning from her experience, and Carol, I will let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Mo. So influencing to alignment. If you think about influencing, and some people think that it means manipulation, some people think that it means a whole bunch of different things. So I went and grabbed, the definition and sort of looked at it, and it's the ability to affect character, development, and behavior of someone or something that requires developing a strong emotional connection with yourself and others. And I think that the last part is, the strong emotional connection is really the key in getting to influencing for alignment. But I want to go through talking about aligning and agreement, because a lot of times the product managers will come to me and say, but I couldn't get them to agree. And I was like, well, I think if we can get people to align, they don't necessarily have to agree with everything, but we need everybody going in the same direction, sort of picking up their feet in cadence, in the right cadence, so that we're all moving together in the right way. So let's first go look at the definitions of align and agree. When you look at align, it's give support to a person, organization, or cause. Agree is to have the same opinion about something and consent to do something that is suggested by another person or be consistent with. While I agree that it's nice to get agreement, because then you have emotionally, you feel that everyone is bought in general, you're not always going to get agreement. I've had in my career many, many times where we've been driving to a decision, and there's one person that says, well, I don't necessarily agree with the outcomes that you're driving. And in particular, I drove large programs at strategic initiatives at Intel. And there were many times where the engineering stakeholders would say, look, I don't agree that that's really why we're doing what we're doing. And I would say, well, can you align with the general direction of what we should do rather than agree and support it, but yet continue to give me your feedback, and let's try to make sure that we're all in alignment, that this is generally where we have to go. That agreement versus alignment helps break through a lot of resistance that people can get. And people also can get, different groups can get very positional about what they want to do. And it's basically getting people off of their positions that they may root themselves with and giving them more flexibility to just align. So in a sense, it gives a lot of stakeholders an out, if you want to think of it that way, but keep the door open to agreement with them. So let's talk about, sort of the pushes and the pulls. When you look at, and I look at product management or product development as a four-legged stool, you've got product management, you have UX, you have engineering, and you have QA. I look at product management's responsibility, or their swim lane, is the what and the why. And in the oppositional statement, engineering is the how and the do. And when things get muddled, where product management is telling engineering how to do something, or engineering is telling people the what and the why, or product management the what and the why, things get very muddled in that stool. But also very important are the oppositionals of UX, which are saying, look, what are the customer outcomes? And QA actually measuring, did we have success in those outcomes? All four of these areas have to have equal tension and support to support up a stool, just like a stool that you would want to sit on. When there is not equality in terms of how they're holding things up, that's when things get a little wonky. And you don't have alignment, and you don't have people pulling in the same direction. And so just to baseline, if everyone understands what their value is in terms of the product decisions, and they are have expectations and accountability, then that goes a long way in trying to do that. But those aren't the only stakeholders. These are just the basics for product management. And when we go forward, and I put on top of the stool, which sits up there, you've got sales engineering, you have marketing, you have revenue operations, manufacturing, infrastructure. I mean, there's a plethora of groups, and I haven't even started with the customers, which is why you're doing your job. I'm looking at internal stakeholders that you sit there and have to go negotiate with, ask them to do certain things, get them aligned to your point of view. One of the biggest ones is your distribution channel, which is sales and sales engineering and marketing and rev ops. Okay, manufacturing is important as well. But when you want to go out and reach the customer, you can't be at the customer all the time. So how do you get sales aligned? There's many different ways to do stakeholder management and influencing with sales. It depends what type of sales groups you have. Do you have a relationship type sales? Do you have technical type sales? And you have to look at what their outcomes are that they're looking for in what they want to achieve. A lot of times what I've had to do with sales is really sit down, first suss out, what kind of salesperson am I dealing with? Is this a relationship type? Is this a logical sales guy? There's a lot of people who are very structured in their sales approaches, and really understand, how do I fit into their structure? Not how I want them to have my structure. What is their structure, so that I can easily present the product and product ideas or notions or strategies or whatever in their words and their vernacular that will make it easy for them to go reach out to their customers and talk to them. If you drive too hard without that empathy, and we're going to get to empathy in a minute, then you will go nowhere. They will not want to work with you. They will not want to sell your products. Even if you have a kick-ass product, it won't matter. So you really have to understand their context. You have to understand a little bit of their background. Where did they come from? And really get to the point where, and and having an open and honest conversation with, how can I help you do your job better? How can I make this easier? How can I, it's fine to ask those questions and really try to become humble and vulnerable and say, look, I need to go sell this. All right. What is it that I can do to make it easier? A few years ago, we stumbled in some technology that I was involved with. And I had to go sit one-on-one with the public cloud suppliers. I had to go sit one-on-one with the Taiwan ODMs. I had to go sit one-on-one and basically say, look, I'm not happy about this at all. All right. I wish I had this product, but we don't. So, Mr. Sales Engineer, how can we make this work for your customers? What is going to be the easiest way that I can work with you in order to get alignment with what product is trying to do and what we're trying to come out with? And I think it was that, you know, look, I'm here to help you tell me what you would like me to do. All in all, I think as we move forward, I need, you know, there's so many competing goals, needs, wants. How do I influence for alignment to release a product, to support new features, to get customer traction? And realistically, the way that I look at it is be a product manager who shows empathy, gratitude, humility, and transparency. And when I really look at that, if I look at people that I work with as my customers, how is it that just like I have building products, how can I take those same qualities of how I think about products and put that towards my relationships that I have within the company? So we're going to go dive into a few key things that you can do in each one of these areas that I found has helped me personally. When I looked at empathy, I think the most important thing is you want to get them to like you. You want people to say they agree with you. You want to feel good about what you're doing. But if you start a conversation and you can listen without bias, I think everybody's has been schooled on meditation. And if you look at meditation, it's always like, okay, you need to sit still. And any thought that comes in your mind, you need to let it go without judgment. This is exactly the same thing. Recently, I had a little dust up with a sales guy, and we don't agree about the future of a certain product. And I firmly had the data. I was like, look, I can't take these engineers and know that I'm going to make the revenue that I want on this product. So why are we doing this? And I really had to sit in a meeting with him and really listen without bias. So I really understood what was he trying to do. What were his stresses and strains? What didn't I understand about his context? And you have to take, if the conversation you think is going to take 15 minutes with this type of thing, schedule 30. Because you want to be present. You want to ask clarifying questions, but you don't want to ask questions that are mean-spirited. And I know everybody's like, well, I want to catch them, so they'll agree with me. No, you need to ask, well, okay, how did you feel about that? And a lot of this, I know it sounds like a psychologist, but it really is asking those probing questions that will help clarify so that you can understand, and then mirror that person's insight, words, or thoughts to ensure that they know you're listening to them, that they understand. And I ended up saying, okay, so what you're saying is that you need another product so that you have cars on the lot that your team can sell. And this one is a car on the lot, even though, that this may not be the best car. And they were like, well, yeah, but it serves this purpose with these 5 customers. I'm like, okay. And so we were able to hammer out a negotiation, and we continue to, work together. The last step is to document the conversation and make sure that they've understood how it will influence your next step. Gratitude. How do you understand the person's role in the product pipeline? And this is partly empathy, but it's partly celebrating that you know that you need them and that you appreciate their work and that you appreciate what they're doing. In a small or a large way, again, appreciate them for their contributions when you can. and celebrate their team success, your team's success, and individual successes in an authentic way. And I think that that gratitude and that importance of having that is really an important way of being able to give back and celebrate what is going on in the company and celebrate with stakeholders that maybe, if you go down on the manufacturing floor, if you're doing hardware, there are technicians down there that spend their life making sure that your products are on the floor and that they're working in quality. You should celebrate them. And I think that's a really important point as a product person, that you recognize that flow of work. Humility. Every conversation, every interaction, everything is a potential learning experience. It's, I have reached out to a lot of teams within Puppet over the last 6 months as we've been making some major changes. And I do AMAs all the time. And ask me anything. And while I probably talk a lot because they want to hear my view, I try very hard. Like I had one person say, well, wait a minute, we have this platform. What is really the platform for? Why, you didn't do it right. You didn't do this right. You didn't do that right. And I'm like, you know what? First of all, I agree with you. Maybe we didn't do that right. And how do you think would have been a better experience for you as an engineer, how we could have positioned this better? Explain it to me. Tell me how I can do better next time. I'm not perfect. I never will be perfect. No. And, take your viewpoint out of the way and try to inhabit their viewpoint, their point of view. You can learn from everyone. And you have to be open to that learning, but only if you put your ego at the door and you agree that this is an important thing to do. And my last point is really transparency, is you do have to stand for something. Make your views known and why. Be open about that and be open to invite others to share theirs and encourage challenge and debate in a respectful manner. Don't try to shroud things. If there's a lack of alignment, call it out, come to a conclusion, list the options, next steps, but be transparent about how you're making that. I try very hard in our decision meetings at Puppet to record those meetings and record those roadmap decisions for people that just can't go there, don't go there. And I put them out on Slack to all of our R&D. So if they want to understand, and by the way, if they see that, look, this was not the way I thought this decision should go, and they have information where maybe we made the wrong call, then I'm perfectly willing to listen to it and make sure. But put yourself out there and make sure that, look, here it is. If it's long documents that your company does, if it's meetings, if it's presentations, make that material available. Do not hoard information. Make it available, because you will have a lot better work product and a lot better chance of getting alignment. So in summary, I think influencing to alignment is all about see your relationships as products, understand your internal customers, listen to their needs, teach them about issues and learn from them about their work and their issues and what they want. And most of all, it's a journey with several waypoints. It's not a journey with a destination. One thing I always said to people about software, and that's, I've had software and hardware jobs, and they're both interesting, but software is the gift that keeps giving. Once you release software, there is going to be a continual, treadmill of supporting the software, improving the software, understanding how customers are using that software. And so it's a journey with a lot of waypoints, and you are going to have to do alignment all the time and influencing all the time. So I hope this has been really helpful, and I've really enjoyed, sort of imparting, hopefully, my wisdom of my years onto the audience.
Carol, this was very helpful. And the examples that you shared, the one that stuck to me of the radical transparency of recording your roadmap meetings and sharing it with the R&D team is very unique. I've never heard that before. So thank you for that. And what other things that stuck out to me were the importance of building that strong emotional connection. And when you're trying to work with people, they may not agree, but it gives them an out to just align. So this was fantastic. So thank you very much for your time and sharing the knowledge and insights. Being able to influence is top of mind for every single product manager and product leader, and what you've shared today and practical examples are amazingly helpful. So folks, please give Carol a big virtual round of applause.
Thank you.
And audience, we'll be back for additional talks, so don't go away. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for attending the CPO Mastery Conference. It's been amazing to host all of you. Don't go anywhere, as we're about to start the networking portion shortly. This conference was sponsored by Product Faculty, where we offer an advanced product management course for product leaders. Product management is evolving and becoming more specialized. And at Product Faculty, we teach product management differently. We realize that given this specialization in product management, you can no longer have one instructor that can go into the right level and depth to teach a variety of topics, including discovery, experimentation, product growth, strategy, and more. And this is why we are the only PM course that offers a multi-instructor specialized model where you learn from the best operators in the world with the deep expertise in their area. Unlike primarily content-based programs like Udacity or Reforge, our program is taught completely live over a 7-week period where you'll gain confidence by learning product management end to end. If you are a mid-career PM or product leader looking to level up your craft, head on over to productfaculty.com and reach out and chat to us about our upcoming cohort on September 25th. And the conference is a wrap. I want to take the opportunity to thank all the speakers who took the time out to share their hard-earned insights, wisdom, and personal stories with our community of product leaders. I also want to thank each of you who attended the conference today. This was the largest gathering of product leaders, and we had attendees from over 50 countries who joined us today. And we want to thank all of you guys for attending, for tweeting, for sharing what you learned today. Although the conference is over, the learning continues. We'll now head on over to the Roundtable and Networking Lounge, where you'll have tables dedicated to open networking. Come, connect, engage, be inspired, and continue to learn with like-minded product leaders from around the world. Thank you so much for your attendance and engagement, and we look forward to seeing you in the Networking Lounge. Take care, everyone.